motion to approve these minute changes, Mr. Chairman.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Is that all we need, Sheila?
That's all.
All right, this is the time we welcome public comment on non-agenda items. Does anybody this afternoon have any thing they'd like to speak about that is not on the agenda for today or this evening? Tim?
My name is Tim Donges from El Dorado, Kansas. I'm the president of the Blue Stem branch for the Quality Deer Management Association. And a few weeks ago I was in Nashville, Tennessee at our national convention, and I'm proud to say that our branch here in Kansas took top honors, #1 branch in the United States, new branches. And there was 30-some branches started up last year in Canada and the United States, and we took top honors. So I was pleased to see that we got that. The other thing that happened there was the state of Kentucky agency took top honors for wildlife agencies in the United States for their quality deer management practices and also for their education that they're doing in the state. It's actually their second time they've won that honor. I'd really like to see Kansas, and Kansas is coming around. I'd like to see Kansas at some point in time, hopefully maybe take that position away from Kentucky. The other thing I'd like to talk about is, and this is part of doing better here in Kansas, and that's our biologists here in Kansas that come out and do our land visits. I realize our time's important and we've got limited resources and so on, but while our biologists are out there, I think maybe we can be doing a better job with covering what we call the 4 cornerstones of deer management while they're out there on their land visits. And those four cornerstones are habitat management, herd monitoring, and hunter management. And just to get good information out there to our landowners and our hunters so they can help in the process. It's all part of the system, part of a network out there. And while our biologists are out there doing their land visits, we'd like to see them get more involved and try to help that landowner out more. I do land visits myself, and I always ask those questions when I'm out there. Has a biologist been here from the state of Kansas? And they say yes, or they might say no, and I always tell them, get with your local biologist to come out and also look at your property and try to get on board with some of the programs. But some of the things I hear is, they don't feel like they're getting enough information. So I'm just asking that our biologists, while they're out there, try to help out with that situation because they're hungry for information. And these are the guys, our landowners and hunters out there, the guys are going to make the changes for the future. The other thing I'd like to bring up, and this is for Secretary Robin Jennison, I don't know if anybody knows or not, Paul Ryan, the VP pick for Mitt Romney, he's also a Quality Deer Management Association member and avid bow hunter. And so I don't know if there's any reasons to possibly make contact with him and get Kansas's name out there for him. I don't know if there's just a contact for us, and I thought it was a good idea because he is on board with conservation, and so I wanted to bring that up. And while I'm here, we are with K-State University, Lloyd Fox, Charlie Lee. We are putting on a quality deer management school on Saturday at Pratt, Kansas, at the Pratt County Fairgrounds. It's free to the public from 8 to 4. That's one of the things that Kentucky also does is they actually hold schools for actually the administration also so they understand deer management along with, what the biologists understand. The other thing, I came here tonight with a bunch of our publications. If anybody interested in what we're doing, I brought some free publications with me. I've got a limited supply, but just get with me then after or during the day here. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other public comments? Well, let's roll into the meeting. Start things off on this wonderful afternoon. State agency and state fiscal status. Robin?
Yeah, maybe.
That's absolutely fine.
Just briefly bring the commission and the audience up to date on kind of where we are in our fiscal year. We're required to present our budget to the budget office September 15th, and so the agency, we were a little bit late getting started this year for a variety of reasons, but one of those was we got an allocation later in the summer, and so we went ahead and put that allocation in before we sent it on down, and Keith's kind of spearheading that effort, so we should get the different project budgets to us in the near future, and then we'll begin putting that in the budget book, send it over to budget office, and after it's been there about a month, we'll probably have an opportunity to go over and appeal certain portions of it. One of the challenges that's going to be for us this year, and it goes back to, I think, the prudence of what we did last legislative session. I know a lot of people get concerned when we talk about the park side of our agency becoming self-sufficient. But the fact of the matter is, that's something that's going to happen. I mean, the current mood of government, whether it's federal or state, is one that they've got some challenges. And even if we come out of the recession, when you look at our agency, whether it's parks or tourism, of course the wildlife side of the agency is totally fee-funded or totally funded by our sportsmen. When you look at that, if we come out of the recession and we start to have money coming into Topeka or coming into Washington, D.C., they've still got a lot of people ahead of us when they set their priorities. And for us to be able to really take a look and have strategic planning for the parks or for the tourism, we're going to have to start finding that money ourselves. And we started down that road last year, had a very successful legislative agenda. Got the park pass, which we're a little nervous about that because that goes through the Department of Revenue. People are going to get it when they get their tags, and if any of you listened to the news this year, they had a little bit of problem implementing that program. So they've got some PR problems with that. We hope they get it worked out by January, and we can begin to start selling the Easy Pass at the Treasurer's office, which for those of you that have not been here before, I will just briefly tell you that we modeled that after a Michigan plan. Michigan got 25% of their registered cars and light trucks. We calculated 10%. And if we get 10%, it'll raise another $1.8 million for the Parks Department. The governor last year also gave us ELAR funding, which is expanded lottery money, which comes from the state's share of the state-owned casinos. And we did pay off our Wildscape cabins. Those cabins have been paid off. So now we're getting 90% of all the revenue from the cabins, and Wildscape gets 10%. That should be about $800,000 additional money for the parks when all the cabins are able to be reserved. That all sounds real good, but the other thing that we got done, we talked the governor into putting us under the Economic Development Initiatives Fund instead of the general fund. It's been my experience that, you know, everybody's looking at the general fund for money. EDIF's a little bit different. The governor willingly did that, and so we thought that was going to be a great thing. When the allocations came out, they treated us and our EDIF money the same way that they treated the general fund folks. So we are going to be toned back about 10% in the EDIF money that comes to the legislature. So even given the opportunities that we had, and it's about somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million, I can't remember, $800,000 and $1 million, I can't remember the exact number. So when we began looking at what our year was going to look like at the end of the session, we thought we're going to have a pretty decent year. We'd had an excellent winter with the weather. We set records in February, March, April, and May for revenue. June, it started back down. July, I believe, was the worst July that we've had, at least in the report that I get, and I don't know, I'm looking for Cindy. Cindy, I think that's 7 years or 6 years, 7 years. So that was the worst July we'd had in 7 years. So I mean, the heat this year has impacted the way the park's bottom line is going to turn out, and the fact that we've got to cut out somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million is going to be a significant challenge for us. The other challenge that we've got, as most of you remember, the legislature passed a significant tax reduction last year. That's going to create in the short term about a $260 million hole for the state of Kansas as far as revenues. And that's one of the reasons they're They've given everybody the 10% reduction. In addition to that, they've asked us to look at our hirings very close. And that's where it's going to kind of blend over. While there's no EDIF or general fund money in the wildlife side of our agency, they really don't want to have those types of agencies getting too much different than everybody else. I think at some point they're going to have to back off on that. There's been a lot of discussion about that with other cabinet members, but for now we're kind of on hold with hirings. And so that's going to create some challenges because we have had several folks that have retired or gone on to new positions, so that's going to also be a challenge for us. But we continue to have a lot of irons in the fire. Linda's doing a number of things for the governor. We just got another one. We are getting ready to put together an ecotourism steering committee for the governor. We're beginning to talk about the resort issues. We've been over to Clinton a couple times. We've met with the city of Lawrence. We're still early in those planning stages, but one of the things that we want to do is keep everybody posted on kind of what we're doing with that. I believe that has been one of the mistakes that's been made in the previous two attempts to create resort properties at our parks, is the legislature would do something, really didn't talk to anybody, and I don't know that the legislature really had enough knowledge to do what they did. We passed a bill in the late 90s that I'm not sure was at any advantage to any developer coming in to do it. So we've met with City Council at Lawrence. They've got some questions, and some developers, some hoteliers in Lawrence. They've got some questions that we're going to talk to the Corps about, and then after that we're going to have a public meeting over at Lawrence because we're quite frankly focusing on Clinton. In all the studies that have ever been done, that is the one that is most likely to have a resort. And that's kind of the report on the agency. And one bit of unfinished business, probably more so for the commission, but I'm sure the audiences also have an interest in, but I thought given the length of the meeting, and I didn't want to put this off to the end, I'd bring it up today. There was a question last meeting about commissioners serving on the working groups. I put a lot of thought into that, and actually I've written down my thoughts on that, and if after the meeting the commissioners would like to see those written thoughts, I'd be glad to send them to any of you. I talked to Keith and I talked to Chris. And for me it boils down to this in working through this. The process that we have has our professional staff work us up recommendations. And then they bring them to the management team, and the management team kind of looks at the recommendations, and then we bring them to the commission, and the commission acts on them. There was a request that we consider having commissioners on those working groups. And to me, I think that there are two real issues with that. Number one, and the one that concerns me the most, is one of transparency. Because I think if you look at a commission, we have a diverse commission, and a lot of times we'll have commissioners that may have a particular interest in an area. And I can see where if we had a working group on a particular issue that one commissioner had an interest in, they would have a desire to be on that working group, and that would naturally be the one that we would put on that working group. I also think that there is a tendency sometimes for commissioners to recognize the expertise that other commissioners have in an area and defer to them occasionally. And so I think that if we had the commissioners on a working group, and if the commissioner had some ability to influence our working group, I think we might not have as good a discussion at our commission meetings when we've got a commissioner with some expertise asking our staff questions. And so I think that is of particular concern to me. Plus, I think it does take away from the ability of our professional staff to present recommendations to whether it's Keith or Linda or Todd or Chris and me when we've got involvement by our commission, which I think our commission has a very important role. Then I get to the transparency issue, which is an issue of significance. And if any of you follow the news, you know that there was some concerns about open meetings laws last year in Wichita or in Topeka with meetings that, not meetings, they were not meetings, they were social functions. They were social functions at the governor's office. There's a lot of concern, especially in this day and age, over transparency. And I think that if we begin to put our appointed commission, who is the ultimate decision on rule and regs, I think if we involve them in that process earlier, I think that there would be a question about transparency, and I would have some real concerns. So in view of that, and also in consultation with Chris, that's something that I'm just not going to do at this time. And if anybody would like to, I do have it written. The only reason I haven't sent it out to you, I didn't need anybody check the grammar yet, and so that's why it's not sent out. But I would, if anybody wants to see it, I would be glad to fix the grammar and send it to anybody. And with that, Mr. Chairman, if there's any questions on the agency or anything else, I'd be glad to answer them.
Anybody have any questions, or the commission have any questions, Robin?
I have one. Mr. Secretary, now that we paid those cabins off, what's our plans in the future for more cabin construction, and how are we going to handle the financing?
We will not be financing cabins.
Okay.
The legislature would look, and the governor for that matter, would not be looking on it favorably. Charlie Black and I have been scheduling a meeting. Actually, I scheduled it for today because somehow I didn't get the commission meeting in my calendar. So Tuesday, I canceled that meeting. We're scheduled to meet Tuesday to start talking about how we want to do it. I think it's pretty well accepted, and Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, we believe the next point of emphasis for the cabins is at Hillsdale. One of the concerns that I've had since I got here about our the cabin program, is I think that, well, and the way that it was done with Wildscape is the way it had to be done. You know, had the previous administration gone to the legislature and said, we'd like to borrow some money to build cabins, it had never happened. The fact of the matter is, you know, they found a way, they've done it. I think people understand it would work now, and if it were not for, I think, the situation that the state is in right now, trying to get rid of some debt, we could probably go and get KDFA bonding and build cabins, just to be honest with you. But that's not going to happen. So we're getting ready to meet with Wildscape, talk about the idea of Hillsdale, and I need to back up. I think that in hindsight, it would have been much better for the cabin program had we gone to a couple of the bigger lakes that we had, high visitation lakes, and put in 20, to where you would have cheapened your per cabin development cost to take electricity, to do sewer, and to do things like that. But the cabins were a neat deal. Everybody, I think, not everybody wanted one, but a lot of people wanted them, and so we distributed them around the state, which probably was not the best way to do it. And we're not going to do it that way now. We're going to look at Hillsdale, and Charlie knows Hillsdale or Wildscape knows Hillsdale is where we want to go. We're going to look at, and they feel like, particularly in that area, that they could have fundraising activities to where they could raise a significant portion of the money, and we'll just attack that program in Hillsdale and see how long it takes us to get our cabins.
But we'll still have some vested interest in it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Matter of fact, we'll have it all. At that point, they're just raising money for us. They're raising money for us. When we put the cabins in, we'll own them, and at that point, and that's one of the things we've got to talk about, do we continue to give them 10% of the cabins? The current MOU, we give them 10% of after the cabins are paid off, we give them 10% of the revenue up to $120,000 annually. But there is an escalator in that $120,000, so that with inflation, that $120,000 would increase.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Secretary. Yes.
The comparison I'm going to make is probably not fair, being the members of the House and members of the Senate are elected and we're an appointed body by the governor. But do members of the House and members of the Senate sit on subcommittees with their staff?
No,
they do not.
There would be rare occasions, and I don't know if it would be staff. The staff, it's a little different deal. There are few in Kansas, I don't know if there's ever a time where staff meets and makes recommendations, because in Kansas, we have a nonpartisan legislative staff. In some states, they have partisan legislative staff, and I could see where you're going with that. I could see where that might be a situation. There are some committees that get appointed partly on the part of legislative leadership, partly on the part of the governor in the past, that have had like industry folks and the legislature. But there are a few examples of the staff and legislators having a formal committee, and there's just really I don't know, Chris, can you think of any time? I just can't think of the legislative staff really ever sitting down and making a recommendation, getting together and making a recommendation.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your comments, and I appreciate you going through the effort and you put a lot of time into it, obviously. But I'd really like for you to consider Commissioner Dill's request again. And I think it's just to where we're at a little bit of a disadvantage, or I am certainly. I can't speak for the rest of the commission, but we'll get a briefing book and we'll come to a meeting like this and we'll have to listen to the public comment, we'll have to listen to the staff's comment, and we'll have to do it in a pretty condensed time frame. I think by sitting on these committees, not saying that we're going to steer them, because one person's not going to steer them to begin with anyway, I don't feel, but we would probably have a lot more knowledge before we come to these commission meetings, and I think that's certainly what I'm looking for anyway.
Well, I'll tell you,
and I'm not trying to be argumentative.
Yeah,
you know that.
I appreciate that. Yeah. But believe me, and what I'm going to say, you'll be convinced it doesn't bother me if you're arguing or not. The thing about it to me is I think, and as a matter of fact, I think I was surprised when I got here how long it takes us before we actually vote on something. I mean, in most cases, you know, it's a pretty involved process where we take a lot of public comment, and please, if there's information that you want, let me or Chris or Keith know, and we'll get you all any information that you want. But, you know, we talk internally. We're going to have a pretty significant discussion tonight on seasons, waterfowl seasons. And I know there's people that bothers that we're going to have that discussion. It does not bother me at all. And that's what I've told a number of people, that I think that we have one of the best commissions that I've ever seen, just from the standpoint that we have a number of folks that have very strong feelings about different issues, and they're very willing to express them. And I think that when this commission gets through with the decision that you're going to make tonight, whatever it is, it will be pretty well vetted as far as the different views that people have. And I think whatever the majority turns out will have known what it was. And I think part of that is due to, number one, the personalities of the commission that we have, but also the input that we've had from the people that have an interest, the people that come to our meetings, but also based on the information that's come from our staff. And I just think it's a good process, and I am afraid that if we had introduced the decision makers to the process earlier, I'm afraid we wouldn't have that discussion in the open.
Well, you know, my goal, and I've stated it clearly, and I think it's probably all of the commission's goal, is we want to satisfy not the secretary, not the commission, not the staff. We want to satisfy the end user. And I think that's the goal that most of us are working towards, and that's what I'm certainly working towards.
And any information we can provide to you all to help you do that, we'll be glad to do.
All right, thank you.
Are there other comments for Mr. Secretary? Any comments from the audience?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Chris?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Joe asked me to keep this short. short today, so I'll try to do that since we're in between sessions. There was a dramatic shift, or there will be a dramatic shift in the legislature, and this is just, we're starting to roll up for the 2013 session. Every year it's an educational process. As new legislators come in, we do our best to educate them on our issues and inform them when bills are introduced. This year will be a pretty dramatic shift, and it's because of how redistricting went at the very end, and it's resulting in, I think, the last thing I could tell was at least 45 new House members out of 125, and then at least 12 new Senate seats, and that's at a minimum. So approximately 60 out of 165 people will be new this year. On the GOP side, Republican side, it's a definite shift away from moderate to conservative candidates. The November elections are actually going to tell whether or not that stays. I think most of those people do have opponents. What does that shift mean for us as an agency? Robin hit on it, and it's a shift to fee funding is what it's going to mean for our agency, and getting us off of EDIF or previous state general fund. I think that was actually coming just in general. It just might come a little faster for us now in the legislature. And we've done that for a long time on the wildlife side. It would be the park side that we're talking about. What does 2013 hold? I know crossbows will be back. I already know that. I see Drew shaking his head in the crowd. But I know that's going to be an issue, and deer will be an issue. For us, we got most of our initiatives through this last year, so there really isn't much for us to do, but it'll be more of a defensive type session for us, especially with a bunch of new people coming in. And the last thing I want to leave with is the November election, House Concurrent Resolution 5017. In the November election, there'll be an opportunity for the constituents of the state to vote to amend the Constitution to allow the legislature to set a different level of taxation for vessels. And we really need to start getting the word out on that as best we can. And I've engaged the governor's office, and hopefully we can get the governor to do a statement on that prior to the election. And with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Anybody have questions for Chris? Anybody from the audience? That's pretty short, wasn't it?
Joe, are you satisfied with that? I think.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
Okay, let's start with a general discussion. Feral swine control efforts in Kansas. Curran Salter?
Yeah, you might just give me a minute. I'm gonna hook in here, get things figured out,
All right.
and I'll be ready to go.
All right, then we should go find some place to sit.
Okay, I think we're ready to go. My name is Curran Salter. I work for the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Wildlife Services program here in Kansas. We've been doing the feral pig work in the state of Kansas since 2006. Just to start off, I'm just going to kind of start from square one about the history of the pig and how it got here and how it got here in Kansas. The history of the pig begins with this guy. This is the European wild boar, Russian wild boar. Notice the genus and species, Sus scrofa. This animal was domesticated into what we have on the farm today, but notice the genus and species. Same animal, different form. If this animal was kicked out in the wild in anywhere from 2 to 3 generations, it'd start taking on those old characteristics, the long hair, long snouts, straight tails. A lot of people confused javelina and wild pig. There are no native swine species in North America. The javelina or the collared peccary is a totally different animal. That's an animal native to the desert Southwest. In 1982, this is kind of where we were at in the United States. When the Spanish first colonized Florida in the 1500s, that was the first introduction of the pig in the United States. In 2004, this is where we are at. Currently, I have not been able to find a real good map as to where feral swine are located in the United States. The last thing I saw was the only state that did not have them was Wyoming. They are present in at least 45 states and as far north as Idaho, Michigan, and Oregon. They are present in every county in Oklahoma and Texas. The primary spreader is the intentional release for sport hunting. Nationally, I think this number is probably pretty low. That was as of 2011. There's 5 million free-ranging feral swine in the United States. Damage was estimated at $1.6 billion per year. Texas, everybody knows hogs are a problem in Texas. Texas is kind of the worst-case scenario. That's what we're trying to avoid here in Kansas. We were at a pig conference in San Antonio this spring. Their latest guess was 2.6 million feral pigs in the state of Texas. That population is expected to double in the next 6 to 8 years. Things are so bad in Texas, they have people like me, trappers, inside city limits of Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Houston. They do control work in parks, golf courses. Things are just really out of control down there. As I mentioned before, they are present in all 254 counties in Texas. They estimate agricultural damage at $52 million. I think that is being way conservative. If you figure $100 a pig per year times 2.6 million, you're looking at $260 million per year. Texas, I'm sure everybody's watched TV in here. They have federal programs, state programs, county initiatives, extension programs, private companies, and wide open hunting. And the population is rising exponentially. Pig work in Kansas. We started, Chad Richardson, I'm sure a lot of you know Chad. He did the first pig work at Fort Riley in the 90s. In 2004, we worked with Oklahoma Wildlife Services along the Cimarron River in southwest Kansas. They had a disease threat. They attributed that to feral pigs down in the Cimarron River. In May of 2005, we had an interagency meeting. We discussed feral swine issues here in the state of Kansas. And finally, in September of 2005, our agency we began surveying and documenting where we had feral pigs in the state of Kansas. Our funding, we're funded primarily through the Kansas Animal Health Department. In addition, Wildlife Services, the federal side, provides vehicles, equipment, a little bit of helicopter time. Kansas pork producers kick in some money every year, in addition to private farmers and ranchers. The biggest spreader of pigs is people. Pigs are being intentionally released for hunting interests. These are some pigs in Kansas that we've taken last couple years. I think it kind of backs that up as people being the problem. These are castrated boars. That kind of is a telltale sign that they didn't get in that condition by backing into a barbed wire fence. What these guys are trying to do, in essence, is grow a trophy pig. Once that boar is castrated, the urge to fight other boars is removed. They're not running sows as hard, so they bulk up, they get big, and they get the big cutters. They're trying to grow a trophy. We took a different approach here in Kansas. We passed some legislature in 2005 or 2006. You can kind of see it there on the screen. No person shall import, transport, or possess live feral swine in the state. No person shall intentionally release feral swine. And we're trying to, on that last part, we're really trying to discourage the sport hunting aspect. We put a little, I won't call it a loophole, a little provision in that law that would allow landowners to take feral swine if they had them on their property. But basically, we're discouraging, if you're not directly tied to that farming or ranching operation, we're really discouraging the sport hunting aspect here in Kansas. When we first started, we caught a lot of grief for that. I think people just weren't familiar with how pigs got spread around so bad. We're trying to discourage the sport hunting aspect, as I mentioned earlier, take that incentive away to release new populations, slow the spread down. When people go banging on a group of pigs, they'll scatter all over God's green acres. And finally, hunting has never been shown to be an adequate control tool for removing feral swine. I think this next set of slides just pretty much tells the story of why we took the approach that we did here in Kansas. This is Tennessee. Tennessee, these populations in red, for lack of a better term, these were pretty pure strain of a Russian boar. They were a trophy animal. You had to have a permit to take those. And in 50 years, those populations spread out, and in 99, 2000, they were starting to get quite a bit of damage there in that part of Tennessee, and they panicked. In 99, they opened it up for a free-for-all, wide open, no limit, no season, take them any way you can get them. And in 10 years, this is what happened. You can see they got dumped and spread all over the state. Some more information to kind of back up the fact that sport hunting is not an adequate tool for control. Some of Chad Richardson's work here on Fort Riley, as you can see, of the 385 pigs taken, only 15 were killed by hunters. Goals for building a statewide pig control program. First of all, you've got to stop the importation, stop the spread of current populations, and finally control and or eradicate current populations. And we've been successful for the most part at eradicating populations here in Kansas. I'm real proud of our work. Damage. Monetarily, the two biggest things that they damage would be milo and corn. This was a lady's yard in Miami County. She woke up one morning and it looked like World War III happened in her front yard. She never heard them, never saw them, woke up to this. This is some milo damage in Miami County. This is a different field in Miami County in one night to milo. Corn. Pigs hit corn a couple times. Right after planting, they'll go right down the rows and pick out the seed corn. This is in Bourbon County. This is about a 60, 80 acre field. He had to replant it 3 times. After the 3rd time, he finally got a stand up. But you can imagine the expense involved in planting a field 3 times. Standing corn, once that corn gets up and has ears on it, they'll get in there and start knocking it over. That was in Barber County. Barber County again. Hay meadows, they'll root up. Primarily what they're going for when they do this is invertebrates. This is some feed in Barber County that they knocked over. Riparian areas, anywhere wet, they seem to like. This is a alfalfa field in Cowley County, about a mile from the Oklahoma border. Native pasture in Cowley County. Native pasture in Barber County. This was actually on the Kaw Wildlife Management Area, just about a mile from the Oklahoma line. There was nothing in this field at the time, but I can't imagine trying to drag any kind of implement over that field. Those holes are about 3 feet deep. This is a terrace in Barber County. You can kind of see a close-up view of that. We estimated in 2011 around $250,000 worth of agricultural damage here in the state. In addition, we have documented a few livestock depredation cases, native wildlife depredation, deer, pigs are especially hard on ground nesting birds, and some other issues. I don't know of any vehicle collisions yet in Kansas, but I can't imagine hitting a pig, 300-pound pig with a vehicle. That would just not be a good thing. These pigs do come in contact with domestic livestock. As as the USDA, that's of particular concern to us. They carry all sorts of things. The two ones that we are concerned with most and test for most often are pseudorabies. This is a particular concern to the commercial pork industry. You can see prior efforts by our agency to eradicate this disease cost upwards of $250 million and took 17 years to do. And we have found pseudorabies in Kansas. The other big thing that we're concerned with is brucellosis. Cattle can become infected when they come in contact with feral swine. And as I mentioned before, we have found both of those diseases and a few others. Finally, we can get to the meat and potatoes of our efforts. Live trapping, aerial gunning, snaring, and night vision. Those are the control methods that we've used here in Kansas. This is a picture of a corral trap. This is the trap we use. We build them pretty big. You can kind of see the gate. Trapping is a process. When I trap pigs, I want this entire group. I don't want anybody outside that corral once that gate closes. And at minimum, that takes, best case scenario, that's a month-long process. And I'll kind of show you an example of the process here. I apologize for this trail cam picture. It's not the not the most glamorous shot. This is in Barber County in 2009. I've got some pigs baited up, and in case you're wondering what I've got in the row sprayer, that's strawberry Kool-Aid. I kind of use that as kind of a cover scent, and as everybody knows, in Barber County, there's lots of corn feeders and corn piles in the winter for deer season, so it kind of sets me apart from regular corn. And here they come. I've got them trained. They were just waiting on me to get out of there, so that's a good sign. As you can see, everybody's comfortable being there. This is the middle of the day. They're sleeping on the corn pile. That's kind of like what I like to see in my trail cam pictures. The next step is I drag my panels and my gate down there, just kind of stack them in the brush or the trees next to this pile, let those pigs get used to being around those gates and the corn and all that, and give them a week or two and build their confidence up. And as you can see, they're comfortable with those panels being there. The next step, I'll usually start with the half corral. I'll put my gate where I want it and build a half circle. That's the next step in the process. And as you can see, we're looking good here. Everybody's comfortable, obviously. There's pigs laying down, 9:30 in the morning. Final step, obviously, is to put that last panel up. Let them get used to going in and out of the gate. As you can see, everybody's in. Everybody's comfortable being in. And then I will set that trap. And hopefully the next morning, this is the result. I'll put 95% of my bait in the middle of that corral, run my trip to the back. When those pigs come in, everybody will be concentrated around that main bait pile. One of the less dominant pigs usually will get kicked off, go back to that pile behind the trip, ruin the whole deal for the whole herd. This is a video. This is also in Barber County. It's a little grainy. This is the day after I put my last panel up. As you can see, the pigs are in, the sows are outside, and you can just kind of see the smoke rolling out of their ears, trying to figure out that gate. I don't know if everybody can see that, if that shows up real well. We've got one pig in the gate that's just not going for it yet. When I see that, I'll give him more time. I want everybody in there, especially those big sows. We have gone to a new style gate. It's an 8-foot wide gate. They seem to be a little more comfortable going in and out of that gate, and I've got more in the works. I think I'm going to have 15 here shortly, and I really like these. This cuts down considerably on the training time. Sport hunting is not effective. If there's one thing I want you to take away from today's presentation is that. This was on the Kaw Wildlife Management Area. As you can see, I'm kind of in step 2 of the process. I've got pigs coming. They're used to being around the gate. This upstanding gentleman came through with his dogs. This is about 200 yards from the Oklahoma line. I guess he forgot where he was at. Those pigs gone. Never came back. This was in Bourbon County a couple of weeks ago. Got some pigs working a pile, and one of our usual troublemakers came in at night and ruined the whole deal. Nothing is more frustrating than putting that much time and effort and having somebody think they're going to go in and shoot all the pigs and ruin the whole deal for me. Aerial gunning, this receives our most press and attention on a statewide basis. This is by far our most effective tool. This was at Clinton Lake a few years ago. Typically what happens is you or the pilot will spot a group in the woods or the brush. These pilots are very, very good. They're very skilled. They can herd those pigs out in the open, keep them balled up, and your job as a gunner is just put them down as quickly as you can. This was in Miami County, I believe. It's just kind of a progression of shots. As you can see, we're not very high off the ground once we start shooting. I wanted to show you, this is actually in southeast Colorado, about 2 miles from Cimarron grasslands. The Cimarron, we're facing north in the helicopter. The Cimarron River's up there at the top of the slide. This is the middle of the day. This is wide open sand sage prairie out there. There's really no such thing as bad pig habitat. There's good pig habitat and better pig habitat. And this is kind of a close-up. I wasn't too worried about these guys getting away, so that's why I took some time and took some photos. This is a ground level view of thick cover. When we first started, we had a lot of people tell us that there was no way we were going to get them out of the brush and that sort of thing. Once you get above it, not a problem. You can see right down in there. As I mentioned before, this is our best tool. I'll have to put in a lot of hours to trap 100 pigs in a year, and with the helicopter I can match that within a day or two, real easy. Up until recently, in Barber County, in the hills, all our pigs were white with black spots. We had a dump 2 years ago south of Medicine Lodge along Little Mule Creek. That boar, one of those boars, cut boars, in one of the first slides I showed was a result of that dump. And since we flew this February, I think we're about cleaned out down there. When we first started flying, we had a lot of concerns about livestock. We were going to run cows through the fences and all sorts of nasty things were going to happen. That just doesn't happen at all. As you can see, there's no reaction at all from domestic livestock. Snaring, we do some snaring in the state. I typically don't. To be effective to run snares, you've got to run them for 4, 5, 6, 7 days in a row, and I never know whether I'm going to be in Ark City or Elkhart from day to day, so I don't do a whole lot of that anymore. This is John Johnson. He hired on with you guys, I believe, in October of last year and left me holding the bag, which I still regret. Night vision, we started getting into this a few years ago. We use AR-15s with Generation 4 night vision, suppressors, and trust me, it's not as much fun as you think. There's a lot of nights where you just don't see pigs at all. Pretty boring. With the night vision, I generally try to stick to what I call the rule of halves, going back to that sport hunting being effective. If I don't think I can take half of them before they get back in the woods or the brush, I'll let them walk. Don't always stick to that. Certain situations like that cornfield in Bourbon County, if those pigs just need to be gone and let that corn get a chance to get up and get going, then I'll break that rule. Some pictures from Barber County, Bourbon County, Barber County. Since 2006, we've taken 2,583 pigs in the state of Kansas. I'm real proud of the work we've done here in Kansas. You can see 1,301 with the helicopter and 1,282 on the ground. If you include Fort Riley pigs, those 385 pigs that Chad worked on at Fort Riley, and what I call border pigs, we've done work in Colorado, Nebraska, Missouri, and I'm probably going to branch out into Oklahoma this spring. We're well over 3,000 pigs. You can kind of see the method there. The aerial method the last couple years, that's kind of dropped. That's not a effectiveness issue. That's more of a budgetary issue. I think we're in good shape as far as that goes from here on out. We've worked with 550 private cooperators on around 750,000 acres of private ground, in addition to state and federal ground, totaling another 200,000 acres. Progress is being made. I'm real proud of the work we've done here in Kansas. We can claim success on that no other state can that has feral swine. The areas in green are areas that had established hog populations. We've got a few little red dots to take care of, and then our last stronghold is in Bourbon, northern Bourbon and southern Linn counties. We've got some individuals down there that have been bringing them in for a while, and that's one of those situations that they just won't allow access to trap and fly, obviously, because they want the pigs. They're pig hunters. When we fly with the pilots are always amazed. They do a lot of work in Texas and Oklahoma, obviously. They are constantly amazed at our ability to be able to go anywhere. One of them made a comment this spring on that little stretch of Cimarron River between Liberal and Meade. He said, I can't believe you got all this signed up. If we were in Oklahoma, I guarantee there'd be 2 or 3 ranches in here that were selling hog hunts, and their neighbors would just be out of luck. as I said, I'm real proud of the work we've done here in Kansas. We're the only state that I know of, not just to control, but eradicate pigs from areas, both large and small. When we were at a pig conference in San Antonio this spring, the phrase Kansas model was mentioned over and over and over. Tennessee is going back. They're adopting the Kansas model. Kentucky, Nebraska, and several other states are looking at what we've done here in Kansas and the success we've had so far. As I mentioned, we've worked with state, federal agencies in Oklahoma, Colorado, Nebraska on some of these border pigs. I feel real strongly about where we're at now. I feel we are miles and miles and miles ahead of any other state with feral pigs. I'm extremely proud of what we've done so far. Some of the things that we need to look at in the future, continued, I'm going to call it maintenance. We do have some areas that are going to require constant maintenance and surveillance, especially along the southern and eastern borders. Thirdly, we need to make our laws stronger here in Kansas. Right now, it's a criminal penalty. I'd really like to see that, or excuse me, it's a civil penalty. I'd really like to see that as a criminal penalty here sometime in the future. And finally, once that's in place, we need to strictly enforce it. There just really can't be any tolerance for any of these pig dumps to take place. I would like to thank our cooperators. Landowner support and cooperation has been tremendous throughout the state. I just cannot thank them enough. And with that, I will take any questions. There usually are a few.
Any idea of the number of pigs still in the state?
I'm going to guess less than 1,000, and the vast majority of those are probably in Bourbon County.
Have you been able to catch many of those that are dumping?
Those are hard. Those take a lot of, they've been obviously trapped before, and that's one of the reasons we're going to that new style gate. I don't think they've, no, no, no.
So what changes do we need to make in the laws in order to meet your goals?
We're currently in discussion with some folks about that. I'll just leave it at that. We've looked at several avenues to getting that, making that law a criminal law. We'll see. I'm hoping to get that changed pretty soon. Okay, we'll go on to the next presentation. Thank you for your time and for the opportunity. One other thing, I would be glad to invite members, anybody associated with wildlife and parks, to go on a ride along with me at any time. Any media members, I'd be more than happy to take you around, talk to landowners that had pigs or currently have pigs. If you would like to do that at any time, I've got some business cards. I'd be happy to set that up for you. Usually got something going on somewhere. So thank you again.
well, good afternoon, everybody. Hi, I'm Linda Craighead, and just wanted to visit with you guys a little bit about a couple of really exciting things that have occurred recently in the state of Kansas. I know the guys are getting ready to put some pictures back up for you. It was the river trail. You got him? Kansas River Trail. For those that don't know, there was something really exciting that happened not only on July 13th, Friday, July 13th, but also on Saturday, July 14th. Kansas River was designated as the second national water trail in the United States. We had the opportunity to have Secretary Salazar here from the Department of Interior in Washington, D.C. for the designation itself. Was anybody here that had the opportunity to go besides the guys over here? Really an exciting thing. I tell you, I want to go back a few years. Keith's crew, in working under the guidance of Secretary Hayden, did a remarkable job for the state of Kansas when they began to develop river access for the purpose of sport fishing and other reasons. As a result of their efforts and the time and energy that was put into those efforts, the job that I had was really kind of easy. I tell you, Roger Wolf is our river access coordinator. He has worked very closely with different organizations along the Arkansas River and the Kansas River. When we came into office about a year and a half ago, there was an initiative by the president to develop, identify areas called America's Great Outdoor Recreational Opportunities. They asked for the recommendations by the agency and by the governor, and the governor put up two things. One was the Flint Hills as a large area of native prairie. The other was the Kansas River as a potential water trail, because the Kansas River is 173 miles long, starts around right outside of Junction City, goes all the way to Kansas City. So it connects not only the prairie and the rural communities throughout that prairie, but also the Kansas City region to Manhattan and elsewhere. So with respect to that, the opportunity to have Secretary Salazar here was really exciting. The designation falls right behind the Chattahoochee River. That's the only other river designated in the United States. What does this mean for Kansas? What does it mean for our river trail opportunities? It's really about driving economics for the state of Kansas. It's about driving economics through recreation and identifying the fact that true outdoor recreation, whether it's consumptive or non-consumptive, drives dollars to states. The thing with this, as the Secretary mentioned, we're losing funding. And we have to look for opportunities beyond the box. We have to figure out how we can bring additional resources to the state of Kansas. Not only are we looking for those opportunities, but so are the feds. And so this was an opportunity for a nonpartisan effort to leverage money to really begin to make something happen for the outdoor recreationalists. We partner very closely with the National Park Service out of Omaha, who was very key and instrumental in making this happen. So, if you have an opportunity, take a look after looking at some of the pictures. I know that Keith is probably going to be able to answer a whole lot more questions than I am with respect to, I think you saw some airboats out there. This not only does this effort a collaborative effort between agencies, both state and federal, but the work that had to be done to pull all this together was very imperative for the communities along the way to work together. So you have Manhattan working with Bellevue, working with Maple Hill, Willard, Topeka, DeSoto, Kansas City. They all had to pull together to make this happen. And to do that, you had to have people in place to help those people come together. So hats off to Roger Wolf and his initiatives. The event itself was amazing. It took place in Manhattan. Could not have done it without the law enforcement personnel and the airboats that you saw earlier. I'm sure that you guys have heard a few of the stories that occurred with respect to the reenactment of the founding of the city of Manhattan, but we won't get into that. We also had the opportunity to showcase the abilities of our law enforcement officers, of our biologists, of our parks folks, everybody. So, I think Kansas deserves to be extremely proud of their efforts, and the team that you guys have in place with Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks and Tourism and the work that has taken place over the last 15 to 20 years has truly paid off. So not only will we get some marketing and publicity from a state perspective, but also from a national perspective. So with that, I'm going to stand for questions with respect to the water trail, and then I'm going to turn it over to Becky. Any questions? No? Okay. Becky? By the way, there is a copy of the news release. It didn't get a whole lot of press coverage. We'd sure like to see more of that come about, and there is a map that's located outside that shows all the access points.
Thank you, Linda. We are excited about the designation of the river trail. The National Park Service has received a fairly small but nonetheless important grant that we're partnering on to do some marketing of that. So the top three priority projects we're working on right now is the development of a microsite, which will be part of the travelks.com website. We're working on a print trail guide, looking at what kind of quantity we're going to be able to print of those, as well as signs. And in collaboration with KDOT, there's a group working on signs that are going to help direct travelers, residents and travelers, to access along the river, but also points along the river, so those that are out paddling know where they are and know where the next location is. Working, again, so much of what we do is in partnership with our tourism partners around the state, with KDOT, with the National Park Service in this instance, and many, many other partners. The Friends of the Caw is an important partner in this particular endeavor, and we're certainly grateful for their knowledge and their participation. Just as a quick update, some of our other major initiatives right now, I did want to announce that September 4th, we're going to have a new employee in the tourism division, Sue Stringer, who is with the Department of Transportation currently and serves as the coordinator for the Kansas Byway program, is being transferred over to the agency and will be housed in tourism. Sue will continue her role with the Byways program. There will still be a coordinator. The state coordinator, Scott Shields, will remain at KDOT. We look forward also to having Sue assist us with some of the agritourism responsibilities as we move forward. Also with the Byways, and Chris Collier is here, and she can certainly address a lot of details that relates to the Kansas Byway program, but I wanted to let you know that work continues with Ted Eubanks, a consultant that's been hired through a federal grant in partnership, again, with our agency and KDOT to develop an interpretive plan for the byways of Kansas. And we did just receive word also on another grant. We did get a grant that's going to study the possibility of development of trails along our byways. And I think maybe that might be 2014 when we're able to get that done. So again, very, very grateful for KDOT's support with the Byways program, and just incidentally, the Kansas Byways consistently ranks near the top in terms of interest from visitors and potential visitors to Kansas. We are also going to be producing, or in the middle of producing, a new outdoor guide for Kansas. It's a 48-page publication. We're planning to print 100,000 of those. It's in collaboration with our Kansas Magazine, and will be supported by advertising. I know we had sold several $1,000s in advertising already, and I don't have an update at this point. Our goal will be to do that annually and have it entirely supported by advertising. So we got to walk before we can run. It will be polybagged and distributed to approximately 30,000 Kansas Magazine subscribers. We want to have some dialogue in terms of the Kansas Wildlife and Parks Magazine and perhaps ways in which we can distribute it that way. And then, of course, send out to consumers that inquire about outdoor activities in Kansas. We'll distribute it at many of the travel shows that we're at and various other places around the state. And I want to mention Kansas Magazine did receive a couple of awards, and Jennifer Haw and our staff, who's the editor of that, in partnership with Sunflower in Lawrence and McCormick Armstrong in Wichita, have just done a tremendous job. We've been very, very successful of reducing the overall cost of the magazine. We started selling advertising in it a couple years ago, and happy to say we're to the point now where that magazine is a break-even proposition for us. It was taxing our budget, and we needed to turn that around so we could use those dollars for other marketing activities. We did receive a gold award and a silver award for the 2010 and 2011 issues of the magazine from the International Association of Printing House Craftsmen, and that was a competition against publications from all across the globe. So I want to commend Jennifer, although she's not here. Maybe she's watching online, and certainly our partners with Sunflower and McCormick on that great award. Very soon we will put out an announcement for we're opening the Attraction Development Grant Program for this year. Just $100,000 in the budget. That program at one time had about $2 million that was available for communities and destinations to apply for. Just a little bit of money left in the budget for that. But nonetheless, it is a way for folks out there to perhaps leverage some of their dollars with some of ours and get some development done across the state that will appeal to travelers and increase our economic impact. I mentioned the website. We're in the midst of development of a brand new website. We'll roll that out this fall. It's a significant undertaking. We've contracted with a company that does nothing but tourism websites. We're very excited about it, but certainly spending a lot of time on that. While we're in the latter half now of 2012, our business works out into the future, and so while we're implementing those marketing strategies we designed a year ago, we're knee-deep in our 2013 planning. We have rolled out our co-op plan to our partners. We did 4 meetings across the state to roll that out to them and share opportunities that they can partner with us and putting the finishing touches on our 2013 plan. We have gone from a biannual visitor's guide to an annual publication. A new contractor, again, is going to save us quite a bit of money. That we're in the middle of that as well. Over half of that publication is supported by advertising. We'll have 300,000 of those roll off the presses at the end of this year, ready for distribution in January. And specifically as it relates to nature-based, we have expanded our show schedule. We'll be at several travel shows this year, some new ones that we haven't done in the past, and hopefully we're going to have some partnership from some communities and others to help us with those shows. Appreciate the support of other folks within the agency. We think it's a great way to meet with prospective visitors one-on-one and tell them about the great assets here in Kansas. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody may have. Thank you.
I'm going to give you just a quick intro into public I need help on which button. You'll have to advance it. In the public land section, we operate with the 5 administrative regions, meaning we have a regional supervisor in 5 of KDWPT's regions. You're just going to. We have 42 field staff. We did lose 5 last year with the voluntary retirement incentive program. So we lost about 5% of our workforce, or I'm sorry, 10% of our workforce out in the field. And with that 10%, obviously there's some things that aren't getting done, or I shouldn't say that they're not getting done. They are getting done, but our field staff just had to pick it up a little bit better. We have 3 unclassified biotechs at Milford, Marion, and Benedictine Bottoms. We manage over 120 properties. We hold license title to 135,000 acres, and we manage over 210,000 through license agreements through the Corps of Engineers, or BOR. We have about 6,000 acres in other agreements. This would be like Lacine Power Plant, Jeffrey Energy Center, where Westar has a plant. So we do manage some other properties through other agreements. It's kind of cut off there, but we have about 75 wildlife areas. 22 of these are Corps or BOR properties on their reservoirs, 37 state fishing lakes, and 10 other public lands. Our primary goals are public hunting and fishing opportunities, and to conserve, manage wildlife in their habitats. And our third goal is to be a source for recruitment and retention of hunters. We implement a lot of programs. We have a lot of youth mentor areas designated on our wildlife areas. We have special hunts programs. We also have ADA areas that are accessible to handicapped hunters. Shifting to KDWP wetlands, in 1859, there was 12 historic wetlands that were deeded by the U.S. Congress to the state of Kansas. All were sold to establish Emporia State University. And if I figure right, we have acquired about 10 of these back into KDWPT ownership. Currently, we manage over 25,000 acres on 32 areas that have natural or developed wetlands that are managed for waterfowl and other migratory birds. They range in size from as little as 2 acres to 13,000 acres, which is here at Cheyenne Bottoms. They also range from playa lakes, salt marshes, other developed marshes. We do have some in WRP, and we also have some wetlands on some of our reservoirs. These are primarily managed with PR, federal aid funds, where we get 75% reimbursement on our management and operations. We also manage them with wildlife fee funds, ag funds that are generated on the property, and we do get assistance from NACA grants and waterfowl stamp funds. Here's a distribution of all our wildlife areas and state fishing lakes and public domain areas that we are responsible for in the public land section. The double circle dots are where we have FTE employees stationed. The red dots are where we have managed or developed wetlands. So you can see most of our wetlands, we do have people that are stationed on those properties because they do require some intensive management. Got one that works? Okay. You just saw that purple star come in. As of next week, we're closing in on another one of the 12 historic marshes in Lincoln County. We're going to acquire another 160 acres there. That's going to be added to our wetland complexes. Speaking of waterfowl stamp sales, we sell about 26,000 to a little over 30,000 about the last 10 years. If you look out here in the hallway, there's a pretty good description of the Kansas waterfowl stamps and what we did with the historical. Well, that beginning 1987 in the early years when waterfowl stamps were created, what we did with that money with Ducks Unlimited, and some of that money was used here at Cheyenne Bottoms. The reason I go back to 2002 is in 2002, waterfowl stamp sales went to $5. Prior to that, they were $3. Looking at the revenue, we generate in the last 10 years anywhere from $130,000 to a little over $150,000 at a high. This money is dedicated for wetland acquisition and restoration in the state of Kansas. It goes into a special fund, and we use it solely for our wetland management program. Although that's not a lot of money, we do partner with NACA, and you're going to hear these four guys talk about NACA projects on their areas here in a little bit. What NACA is a North American Wetlands Conservation Act that is a federal grant program that fosters development of public-private partnerships to protect migratory bird habitat. We use it in Kansas for wetland restoration and acquisition. And since 1990, we have completed 16 projects using more than $27 million, impacting 71,000 acres. And we have two more projects proposed this year. One will be at Jamestown that Rob will talk about, and another one will be at Neosho that Monty will talk about. This is a Ducks Unlimited partnership. They're the ones that administer the grant. We work with Ducks Unlimited. They coordinate the grant program for us. Without Ducks Unlimited and their partnership, this would be a very time-consuming grant for us to implement in the department. So we appreciate that partnership that we do have with Ducks Unlimited. Wetland management, obviously, water is pretty critical when you're managing wetlands. Often there's too much, not enough. Got to determine when, where to put it. Water rights, do you have pumping rights, surface rights, refuges, where, dates, sizes are all important in a manager's decision-making process. Vegetation, obviously, with water and food, you have ducks and other migratory birds will use those areas. If you were on the tour this morning, you heard Carl talk about undesirable vegetation. That's another challenge that our wetland managers are often faced with. Challenges, aging infrastructure. Many of our wetlands are reaching 50 years or more in age. With that, you have failing infrastructure, dikes, levees, water control structures that often need replaced. This increases the cost, time, and manpower in managing those areas. Again, when I talk about decision making, all these managers have to make some decisions throughout the year, and those decisions they may make in April are going to impact what that area may look like come fall hunting seasons. So it's all pretty important. Hunter management is also another decision that they need to consider when they're managing their waterfowl areas and how they're going to manage hunters when it gets to the fall hunting season. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to some of our dedicated, well-trained wetland managers in order. Rob Unruh is the manager at Jamestown Wildlife Area. He's been there for 22 years. Followed by Rob is going to be Brent Teedy. Brent is the manager at McPherson Valley Wetlands. Brent's been the manager there for 8 years. And then Carl Caro, manager at Meridazine Wildlife Area. Carl has been there for 27 years. And follow that up will be Monty Manbeck. Monty's the manager at Neosho Wildlife Area, and Monty's the newcomer. He's only been there 7 years. So, and when these guys are done, we'll open it up with any questions or comments that you may have.
Chairman, commissioners, administration, and members of the public and our peers and colleagues, we're honored to present our wetlands for your review today. Jamestown Wildlife Area is a historic wetland. State started managing Jamestown in 1932. It's located 15 miles northwest of Concordia and encompasses about 5,000 acres right now. It's important because it's on the string of wetlands that start from rainwater basins in Nebraska, clear down to the Salt Plains of National Wildlife Refuge in Oklahoma. You can see in between there's Cheyenne Bottoms, Covera, McPherson, and Slate Creeks in the way there. This is a layout of our current complex at Jamestown. The area drains 138 square miles. We have 7 managed marshes on the area. We also are a gravity flow system. We have no pumping capabilities at this point in time. This is our waterfowl counts through the last 3 years. We usually have a pretty good early teal season migration, followed by another move of waterfowl around the Halloween time period and around the Thanksgiving weekend. And again, we have ice that shows up just every year right there in the first week of December. So we need to have our hunting days during the time when our ducks are on our marsh, which is the low plains early zone. This is our harvest. It's dependent on a lot on the habitat we have at Jamestown. We can have a lot of water like we had in 2011 after our floods, but we didn't have much food. So the ability to have water on and off at the right time to grow the correct vegetation, moist soil units are very productive when we can hit those conditions. We've been in a mandatory hunter survey station at Jamestown since 2003. We have a two-part card. The top part collects demographic information, name, age, location, and the bottom part's our harvest data. We found that 81% of our users come from Kansas, so we're a local marsh, and it's also followed by quite a few of the more urban states, but they come from all over. We even had a rail hunter from France here on his honeymoon. So we recorded 28 states. That was from the latest year's data. And they come, 81% of them come from Kansas. And it's interesting that we have our local users we're in Cloud counties where our marsh is located. It's usually followed by a rural county, then an urban county, then a rural county, then an urban county. That's how it gets ranked. So it's kind of interesting. We found that out. And so if anybody's interested in doing some marketing research on that phenomenon, they can, we got some data for that, but this is where they come from. Jamestown's an old marsh. It's been dammed up, since before 1932 by some private landowners. So the marshes have been in public and private ownership for a lot of years. We have some of the same stuff that Carl has here at the bottoms with a lot of siltation, cattails come behind that, which hindered our hunter access and waterfowl management. So we had two existing dams on the area, low-head dams, and since the sedimentation was there, we had little water control. We couldn't drain the marshes out, so any habitat management was pretty tough. So in 2001, the department made Jamestown wetland the top priority. We applied for the NACA grants. We did a lot of feasibility studying, public meetings, and we had a pretty good renovation team that had some experiences on some other projects, notably Cheyenne Bottoms and McPherson, and we developed our plan. And this is our NACA grant partners. You notice that down towards the bottom we have a lot of the local county boards of commissioners. They realize that having something nature-based in their backyard is pretty important to them. We did a lot of our work in 2006 to 2008, digging the drainage canals, subdividing the marshes, constructing water control, completing that, and we also converted 400 acres of marginal cropland back to native grass, plus a lot of invasive tree removal and brush. And our NACA 2 grant, which we just completed, was mostly a land acquisition partnership. Same partners. We ended up getting 830 acres purchased. The price was around $1,400 an acre for property, and we'll know that's not true today sometimes. Our NACA 3, we just completed submitting that. The focus of that will be mostly raising the height of the north dam to offset the sediment that's settled behind that, to regain some of our surface acres and water. It's our storage pool. We're also going to work on our land acquisition at our Talmo area and some more areas around Jamestown. This is where Jamestown's at, and to your right you'll see Talmo, just about 18 miles away. This is a historic marsh. It's one of the 12 salt marshes given to the state of Kansas by our federal government in 1862 under President Abraham Lincoln's administration. The footprint is as we can be able to figure it out, is about 1,800 acres. The state now owns 708 acres. 2 of those are on a WRP contract, and we're actually working on the finalizing of those two plans, which by next year we should have 100 more acres of wetland in that basin. Negotiations are ongoing with other landowners in that footprint. As with most wetland operations, it does tend to be wet sometimes, but if you don't get stuck once in a while, you're not doing anything. So this is the aquatic backhoe we acquired from Cheyenne Bottoms in February, and we put it to a lot of use. We've put 171 hours on the machine. We dug out our initial drainage channels from 2003 because they had filled with sediment. So now our boat channels are ready to go for upcoming season, at least in the Gun Club Marsh. Like we had talked to before, water operations is one of our main things that we can't get it on, get it off in the right time. We can't really have optimum habitat. We work really closely with Division of Water Resources to work within our water rights. Like I said, the ability to move the water. The Gamekeeper Dam, we can divert water from our storage pool to our other managed pools down below. We have Gun Club marshes subdivided with drainage ditches and construction of that, and also we move water into our Marsh Creek Marsh. And below that is our Buffalo Creek marshes, which we're trying to get a water right to actually have our first pumping station to try to move some water over there when water is available in the Republican River Basin. Currently, we're under our minimum desirable stream flow limitations, so we're not able to divert any more water under our junior rights, but we're trying to move one of our water rights from our senior right over to junior right to be able to spread some more hunters out on some more optimum habitat. The next NACA we're going to work on is to work in our storage pool, and this will have probably one of our best habitat expansions, because we're also going to work on our Talmo Marsh also. So this is getting worked on as we speak, even though we just submitted NACA 3. And our forecast is water is flowing in Marsh Creek. We do have vegetation. We have good food out there. We're working with our water rights to make sure we have some marshes full. Some have a little bit of water in them, and some have, huntable water. And we're still trying to hope we can get these two little other marshes, Marsh Creek and Buffalo Creek, pumped with some water. And like I said, we do have our drainage canals ready to go for boat access in those areas. So yes, we do have water, and we do have food, and we're just waiting on the ducks. Thank you.
All right, well, I'm Brent Teedy, and I'm going to talk to you about McPherson. Little disclaimer, it's real hard to cover any of these areas in 10 minutes, so we're just going to hit the highest of the highest, at least I am, things that I think are the most important about McPherson wetlands. On paper, about 4,455 acres. We're a little different than some of these other areas you're going to hear about in the fact that we're split into 3 different management units, and the fact that we have 51 different pools. Ranging in size from just a few acres up to our largest pool of about 110 acres. We have 1,000 acres in ag production, 1,750 acres in actual wetlands, and then the remaining 1,705 acres in uplands, dikes, parking lots, everything else. On the map, you can see McPherson up here on the upper right, Inman down there in the bottom third, right in the middle. 3 different units. The top one, biggest one. Okay. Top one here is the Big Basin, our largest unit. We'll look at each of these units in more depth in the next few slides. Second unit, Chain of Lakes. Third unit, Farthing Lake Little Sinkhole unit. 15 miles tip to tip. Starting in the Big Basin, just a normal satellite imagery here on the left, and then the map out of our area brochures on the right. This highlights really well how our pools are all stacked in there as tight as we can get them. And also refuges and other things that are present on the area. But Big Basin, 2,550 acres, 27 different pools. We also have 2 different refuges on the Big Basin unit. Our north refuge, not a lot of water on that refuge. It is open through teal season. It doesn't go into effect until October 1st. And we do hold a couple of youth pheasant hunts later in the year on that refuge. South refuge closed year round, about 325 acres of water when it's full. On down the Chain of Lakes, 480 acres, 6 different pools. Farthing Lake Little Sinkhole, 1,425 acres, 18 different pools. Wetlands themselves, Like I said before, we have 1,750 total acres of wetlands. We have about 125 of those acres managed in ag crop production through our ag tenants. On top of that, we try to do between 100 and 200 acres of forest account ourselves. Usually try to start out with milo, but either due to Mother Nature or other priorities, we end up with millet or buckwheat later in the growing season. We started drilling millet this year, middle of July, and we have yet to see a sprig of millet come up. It's just nothing. No rain, no nothing. So very, very frustrating. Depending on how many of those activities we get done through our ag tenants or through ourselves, we usually have somewhere around 1,500 acres in moist soil management. Water rights. We could spend all day talking water rights at McPherson, but obviously very important to wetland management. We have 3 groundwater rights, 2 in the Big Basin and 1 down at the Farland Lake unit. Very limited resources from groundwater. When you start pumping, for instance, our Farland Lake pump is pumping, well, it was pumping yesterday. I turned it off for today. Pumps about 800-900 gallons a minute on a good year. This year our water table is so low, we're pumping about 2/3 capacity. Couple that with 6-inch cracks in the ground. It's extremely slow going. So obviously most of our water is coming from surface rights, runoff, rain events, which we have a lot more water appropriated to us. In the Big Basin, we have 5 different surface water rights for just under 6,000 acre feet. Of those acre feet, 1,620 of them have to be pumped through our relift stations, and I'll explain those a little bit more here in a second. Chain of Lakes, 1 surface water right, 260 acre feet, and then 3 surface water rights down at Farland Lake for a little over 2,200 acre feet. To explain the challenges, if you will, of water rights, I'll go through some of our wells and things here. The one on the left there, our North Refuge pump, we have 180 acre feet appropriated to the state. Through a purchase agreement, when we bought this land, the lady wouldn't sell it to us unless we kept her tenant on for an additional 5 years to farm the ground with the use of the water. So once this 5-year deal's up, then we can get rid of him, or his contract will expire, excuse me, and we'll put it up for competitive bid again, and then all that water will be available to us once we take our probably 15% hit to convert that from ag down to rec, and we'll be able to use that to flood marshes exclusively instead of having to split it now. Right now, 100 acre feet we use for marshes, 80 acre feet goes to the tenant. So that was pretty simple. Just split it off from ag to rec and we're done. The one there on the right is a little more complicated. It's our north pump, 126 acre feet. When this land was bought, the tenant or the landowner retained about 20 acres around his home. So part of this allocation was allocated to the ground that he retained. So we have to split off that portion of the water right to him. That's pretty simple. That's just an acre feet per acre calculation. He gets his, we get ours, and we go on. The problem was that DWR also had a stipulation on there that regulated rate. There was a maximum rate at which water could be diverted. So we're trying to figure out, no one's done this, at least none of these guys have done this, but we got to figure out how you split rate. My fear with this is I don't want to have to run my pump at half throttle to stay under some diversion rate, because it's hard enough when you're only pumping 1,000 gallons a minute. If I can only run at half throttle, it just, more time, more money, so on and so forth. So this one's free and clear. We actually have all 126 acre feet that we can pump to marshes, but like I told you before, it's pumping about 2/3 capacity and is really slow going. Obviously, most of our water comes from surface water rights, runoff. All of our pools are designed with these sort of flap gated structures. Some of them up to 4 flap gates, just depends on how they fall into the drainage. Very cost-effective way, easy way to take water. When we do get these runoff events, like in the previous slide where we're running, lots of water into the marshes, it's kind of a feast or famine. We want to get as much of that water as we can when it's there. So to do that, we've got a couple relift stations that pump water out of these drainage ditches into our storage pool and allows us to capture as much of that water as we can when it's here. These pumps are more common, like with Carl and Monty, similar to a permanent pump on a river system. When the river flows, you crank it up and away you go. And they also pump a lot more water. When these things run together, when I say run together, that pump and that pump at the same time, we're pumping about 15,000, 16,000 gallons a minute. As opposed to groundwater well, you're pumping 500. So getting away from water rights, past projects, the McPherson project was started in 1989, And since that time, we've been through a series of 5 different NACA grants. We finished up NACA 5 in 2008. The total for all these grants, including contributing partners, was about $10 million. So basically, we went from nothing in 1989 up to where we are now through this series of NACA grants. It's been really exciting to be. I was just in on the tail end of that, but it was pretty exciting to be in on that. Future projects, we've got a couple things that weren't quite right. We want to improve Pool 3 and Pool 6 in the Big Basin, try to catch the drainage a little bit better so we don't have to try to move water around quite as much. On top of that, we want to improve the water delivery into and out of the Big Basin. The Big Basin, by definition, a basin is flat. This one's no exception. There's about 8 inches of drop in a full mile. And when you start trying to drain water out of that full mile and you're pinching it into water control structures along the way, it's very, very slow. Trying to drop water in a timely fashion to plant crops or do maintenance or whatever is very, very difficult. So we want to look into those possibilities. And then the last thing that most exciting to me, explore some possibilities in the changes of the design, maybe the functionality of the Big Basin, if you will. Make it function more like a basin as opposed to independent wetland cells. And we'll see how that comes out. Last couple slides here is our hunters and harvest. I will caution you, this number of hunters is kind of somewhat inflated if you're just looking at duck harvest, because I have no way to split out our pheasant hunters. And depending on how much water we have, our best guess is roughly half of our hunters are pheasant hunters. So I don't play the number games with Monty and Carl, because my duck per hunter average looks terrible when you figure in all the pheasant hunters. But you take out roughly half of those hunters on any given year, and it looks a lot better, getting close to 2 ducks a hunter. The other thing on this slide, we started our dove management program in 2009, and it's been very, very successful, very, very popular with the public, very well received. We'll continue to do that forever, probably. A graph of the last table you just saw really highlights how dependent we are on Mother Nature. 05 and 06, tremendous drought years, and that is very well reflected in this graph. And in the last talk from Rob, you heard about the flood of 2011. You can see how weather can vary so much just in the 30, 40 miles we are from Jamestown, because this is where we were in terms of duck harvest. We were basically completely dry. So the way we got these wetlands scattered across the state is very important. Gives opportunity to everybody, and with that, I'll sit down and be quiet, unless there's any questions.
Well, one of the discouraging things about getting old is going to department meetings, and you look around, and some of the managers there were exiting the birth canal just about the time I got to Meredazine. So, yeah, you maybe you've been there too long, I don't know, but it's still an exciting, challenging place to be. So I'm always tickled to have the opportunity to provide information about it. Brief introduction: it's the second oldest wildlife area in the state. 7,600 acres approximately, 2,700 acres of wetlands. It's 45 miles south of the Kansas City metro area, so we have a large human population to draw from. That's both a benefit and a negative. Obviously, we like to provide that recreation to a maximum number of folks, but it also provides us with some challenges in terms of managing human disturbance. Meredazine is unique for its managed wetlands and bottomland hardwood forest, which makes it completely different than any of the other wetland units scattered throughout the state. And in the Meredazine Valley, there's a number of important partners, including a National Wildlife Refuge adjacent to us of roughly the same size, over 40 duck clubs that are managing about the same amount of area as the state of Kansas is managing, and 4 conservation areas just across the line in Missouri that are involved with waterfowl and wetlands. So we're kind of in the center of regionally a pretty big complex of waterfowl and wetland activity. Recent projects, we renovated Unit H. It's a 72-acre wetland that for political reasons the levee was breached over 30 years ago. And I'm not going to go into the details of that, but regardless, for 30 years, it wasn't able to hold water. Vegetation succession advanced. It was providing little benefits to either the waterfowl resource or to humans. We repaired and enhanced 5,900 feet of levee and replaced a water control structure and restored it to a semi-permanent wetland. This will be a low-intensity management wetland. Won't have the annual drawdown and pumping water in, but still provides benefits, and it's a wonderful, exciting place for a father-son type hunt because you're kind of isolated and you're not involved with this head-to-head competition with other parties in a big open marsh. We replaced the main river pump on the wildlife area. This was a 15,000 gallon per minute fixed speed pump that was installed in 1982. We replaced it with a smaller unit that's a variable speed pump. The most important part about that is we can match our pumping rate, our diversion rate, to the available water in the river. Because we're achieving 11,000 gallon per minute with a 100 horse motor, where the old 1982 Model A version took a 200 horse motor to pump 15,000 gallon per minute. Our electrical demand charges, which we incur each month we operate, went way down. That means now summer irrigation is now feasible financially. Being able to match our diversion rate to what's available flows in the river helps us to protect river mussels downstream. Estimated as many as 250,000 individuals between our pump intakes and the state line. So we're very cognizant of our impact on those critters. And this is a critical enhancement. It'll come up again later in my little presentation. But in these last 2 years, if we hadn't had this pumping unit, if we still had the old pumping unit, we'd have been flat out of business. But because we were able to divert at a low rate over a long period of time, when river flows were low, we stayed in business and had very successful seasons. Clearing wetland woody vegetation, again, a contrast to the wetlands out in this part of the world where woody invasion is not a huge problem. It is in eastern Kansas. The unit we operate is a Bobcat with a forestry cutter. 220 acres were treated in previous years. Slide's actually out of date in the 10 days since I made it because we've been operating that machine over that period of time and increased our acres some. And we'll continue with that. That's going to be an ongoing process. Wetland stump removal, the light in here is not great, so the background slide's a little bit hard to see, but that was typical of several of the wetland units at Meridazine. These were bottomland hardwood forests. They were flooded. The water was left in, killed the trees, but the stumps remain to this very day. Same Bobcat, different attachment. Removal allows management tools to manage vegetation within these units. You can imagine with that obstacle course out there, it was simply impossible to get in there with equipment to positively impact vegetation. Removing the stumps opens that door to us. And we've treated a fair few acres already, and that process as well is ongoing. Levee enhancement and renovation. This is reshaping levees to modern specifications. A lot of our levees were constructed right after World War II with no specifications. The landowner just went out and shoved them up. Narrow top width, steep side slopes. They were subject to flood damage. It was impossible to manage the vegetation on the side slopes. You simply couldn't mow them or get on them with equipment. So we're configuring those to what would be a more modern engineering standard. 2,700 feet done last year, and we expect 7,000 feet to be done this year, and we're well on the way to getting the 7,000 feet. Well, this is all about creating habitat, which makes ducks, and that yields harvest opportunity. This is a graph of harvest and hunters from 1963 to the present, with the exception of 2 years for which we don't have data. We consider this data to be very reliable. There's kind of 3 management periods at Meridazine. Prior to 1982, units would either flood or fill with precipitation. They would dewater through evaporation or sometimes intentional dewatering, but there was no pumping system, no water movement between units, and so you were at the whim of Mother Nature. As you can see, annual harvest was a little over 2,800 ducks, hunters a little over 4,000 hunters a year, and harvest was 0.7 bird per hunter trip. Well, the next period was from 1982 when that big 15,000 gallon per minute pump was installed, and moist soil management was initiated. And if you notice, actually, average harvest went down a little bit. Number of hunters also went down. Harvest success bumped up a little bit. But what's really important here is if you look at these two periods, the first period is characterized by wild variances in hunter success and the number of hunters. From over 7,000 hunters in a year, clear down to 1963 when I would not have wanted to be there, when it took 2,000 hunter trips to harvest 700 ducks. And then we get into this next management period, and our hunting became very consistent. And if we go into the third management period, which started in about 1994, the department started to invest in some infrastructure modification that helped us move water more timely. We actually use less water. We've subdivided units along topographic lines, so we have appropriate water depths. And look what it did to our harvest and hunter numbers. Harvest is up over 4,700 ducks a year. Number of hunters over 3,500. And average success 1.34. Those increases are over the previous management period, so nearly a doubling of harvest and over 60% increase in harvest success. So it's really gratifying to me as a manager. The department invested resources into the area to make improvements, and we have the data to actually come back and show that infrastructure modification, those investments are paying dividends. If you look at Lynn County and Merdocine, the influence it has on the flyway basis, this is a map of annual mallard harvest by county. And it's probably hard to read, but we are in one of the highest counties in the flyway. And of course, this is a combination of not just the state area, but also those 40 private duck clubs that are clustered around the state area and depend on the management of the state area. When do hunters come? How do they vote with their feet, so to speak? This is a slide of 5 years of data. Took out opening weekends because they tend to blur the data. And this is the average harvest in hunters per day over different weeks of the season. And you can see November and early December are very important to us. That's when we have our highest number of hunters and our highest number of harvest. Even more significantly, if you look at harvest compared to hunters, that's our highest hunter success too, whereas when we get into late December and into the January days, our harvest success is getting down around 1 duck per hunter. So not only total number of hunters in harvest, but harvest success is highest in that 3rd and 4th week of November as well. There's another piece of information that this graph doesn't show, however, is that we tend to lose our teens and our hunters over 55 late in the season. They're simply unable or unwilling to contend with ice, 20-degree temperatures, and so on. So, November and early December days when the weather's a little milder and we're not frozen are very important to those two groups of individuals. Brad mentioned the manpower and staffing thing. Well, we were one of the areas that took a hit. We lost one of our full-time employees. Merdocine had been staffed with 3 full-time employees since the 1950s. It's our #1 tool for achieving management objectives. I've got to have butts on the seats of tractors and implements or you don't get work done. Major areas of impact is we are seeing a reduction in intensity of wetland management. And of course, that's going to, in the long run, reduce hunting opportunity and harvest. Infrastructure maintenance, suffering We have 133,000 feet of levees on Mer de Zine, and it takes time and manpower to maintain that. Forestry management has almost ceased control of invasive plants. Very manpower intensive activity, it's suffering, and constituent services, ability to provide goods and services to the public. So we're certainly, and I've got a very dedicated assistant manager, and we're working hard to keep all the ends tied up, but it's very challenging to lose 35% of your staff and still try to manage at the same level of intensity that you did before that loss. Outlook for 2012, I probably could have stopped with just this slide. If you look east central Kansas where the star is, we're right in the midst of the most intensive drought according to the Palmer Drought Index. But the good news is about 45% of the area has vegetation that's in good to excellent condition. And the reason for that is we've been able to pump those areas to irrigate the moist soil plants, and the only reason we had that capability was that pump replacement that occurred a few years ago. Any place that we were unable to get water to irrigate moist soil plants are in poor condition to worse. Several wetland units, in fact, have been dissed. They were going to produce nothing in terms of benefits for waterfowl, weren't going to provide hunting opportunity. So we looked ahead and said, you know, this is the time to get those units renovated, get them in good shape so that we can have a good season next year. The big wild card is whether we're going to be able to have water to pump units for the season this fall. If you look at the series of triangles across the graph here, that is a median flow for August. That flow actually typically goes down in September, but the blue line is the current flow in the river. That looks bad enough, but when you realize that the blue flow, where the blue line is, the only reason it's that high is because industrial and municipal water users have called for assurance water out of the reservoirs, so water's being released for them. They're not efficient at capturing all of the water that's being released for them, so some of it is getting by, or this line would be much, much worse. In fact, I think it would be approaching zero right now if it wasn't for reservoir releases for the assurance districts. That's probably not going to persist into October, September and October for us to pump units, so very worrisome at this point in time. Well, to get to the bottom line, Mer de Zine is nearly 60 years old, but the old gal's aging pretty good. Pretty exciting prospects, I think. We're in good shape and good things are happening. Lloyd Fox here is smiling because he was probably the guy that maybe bolted that sign on. I don't know. But anyway, with that, I'll close with the obligatory sunset photo. If I can address any.
Do you have an average freeze-up date?
I don't know as I have a hard data date, but we usually figure anything after the 15th of December that we're not frozen up is bonus. It becomes a real wild card. 10th to 15th of December. From then on, we can be frozen or not frozen, and it's wildly variable. And it shows on that, you know, that hunter success and when hunters come. I mean, it's pretty noticeable there.
What was your freeze-up date last year?
Last year was an anomaly, and we did not have a prolonged freeze-up last year. We were frozen for 2 or 3 or 4 days at a time, a couple of times. That doesn't really kill us. It's when we freeze up and lock up and stay frozen up for extended periods that we're done. We're out of business. Monty?
All right, Neosho Wildlife Area. Relatively small in size, but you're going to get the most bang out of your buck right here on this wildlife area. I'm very proud of it, and I I think I can speak for the former managers that have worked here. There's only been 3 in the history of the area, and I'm sure have all been proud to work on this area. So it was purchased in 1959, and the original purchase was for almost 3,000 acres. The first waterfowl season was in 1962. South Unit was purchased in 1988 through a joint effort between KDWP and Ducks Unlimited. The area is managed by 2 full-time employees, myself and an assistant manager, which I've been lacking since last October, probably. Assistant manager stepped up, but my new assistant manager graduates tomorrow, so I'm ready to have him back on board and get some stuff done. So I not only manage the Neosho Wildlife Area, but there's 3 other properties within my management unit that I'm in charge of. And the average annual visitation for the area is approximately 30,000 visitors. The primary goal of the area is to develop and manage the area's historical and natural resources in a manner that its potential as a resting and feeding area for migratory waterfowl can be fully realized. Although we directly manage for waterfowl, there's also secondary benefits to a lot of other species that are also positively impacted through that. Here's a little bit about the total hunters and duck harvest. As I said, the area is only about 3,300 acres in size. But as you can see, we have a pretty high harvest rate. And we also hold host to quite a few hunters on such a small area. The data is basically compiled from 1986. The reason for this is that was when the hunter card was introduced to the area. We have data that dates back prior to that, but I don't know how accurate it is, so that's why we choose 1986. And just like Carl said, we hold a lot of faith in our cards, and we do crunch those numbers, and it's a very important resource tool for our area. This is an entire season. This was last year's season, and this will show you a lot of different things. It shows you weather changes. It shows you migration changes, when birds come in, when birds get stale. It's basically the harvest throughout the entire season. This slide here is a percent harvest by species, this is mainly a mallard harvest area. However, we do harvest a lot of other ducks, which the main harvest on our other ducks, about 43% of those ducks are harvested within the first 2 weeks of the season. So I think that's a pretty significant number. And then our second highest harvest species is the green-winged teal. Our yearly average on the ducks per hunter at Neosho, varies. But my philosophy, I'm always shooting for at least a bird and a half a hunter. That's kind of my overall goal. So even in what we consider some of the tougher years, like last year, we were still over a bird and a half per hunter. It was just fewer limits were being shot, and people were struggling a little bit more. So the habitat types, like I said, we're about 3,300 acres in total size, 1,700 of which can be inundated. 800 acres of that is refuge. So we do have a big refuge, which is I feel like is one of the keys to our area. 650 acres of timber, 280 acres of native grass, 1,200 acres of cropland, 900 of which have been contracted to local producers. And then the remaining acres is what we farm within the marshes or moist soil management. This is kind of the breakdown by pool as to what we do on a particular season as to how we manage. It's typically a 60-40, 70-30 split is what we shoot for as far as row crops to moist soil or millet. And here's a slide that kind of depicts a little bit of the management that we're doing. This is Pool 1, which is approximately 350 acres in size, and as you can see, there's quite a bit of diversity there. The reason for this management is we feel like we're giving the ducks everything they could possibly want at any given time of the year. There's high protein small grains, there's high carbohydrates in corn, plus there's leafy material for the ducks, gadwalls, widgeons, stuff like that eat the leafy vegetation, as well as it's a very important source of invertebrate structure, which is a high protein food for them as well. This is another pool that would be more row crop moist soil, and as you can see, there's a whole host of different plants out there. There's Bidens, millets, smartweeds, barnyard grass, list goes on and on. So what we do, typically we dewater our areas anywhere from the middle of March till the end of April, and after the dewatering is done, we pick out our strips where we're going to plant our corn, and we typically work that ground up, and then we evaluate the strips come mid-June and make a determination as to whether or not we're going to leave the strips or we're going to till them up and plant millet. So if the vegetation is not what we want, then we try to create the best habitat that we possibly can. And as Carl said, the way we monitor success is kind of the same way as these other guys. We do have a daily permit card that is required. Determines our hunter numbers, our harvest trends, crippling rate, and hunter success. We do have a hunter check station that is run about 15% of the season, and we also conduct biweekly waterfowl counts. With the waterfowl area, we do have management challenge, vandalism. This is never a pretty sight when you come to work and you find this. There is a pump behind that tractor, by the way. You just can't see it. We either have too much water or not enough undesirable vegetation. On the Neosho, we do incur a lot of double pumping costs where we have to pump from the river into the Flat Rock Creek, and then from Flat Rock Creek we divert it into our marshes. So we have to touch the water twice before we ever get it into the marsh. Double the cost. And the area is 50 years old, and with that we have a lot of failing infrastructure, outdated pumps. We don't have the ability to have those variable speed pumps like Carl, and this would have been a great year to potentially have that in our cards during the drought. And with that, those challenges, we have partnered up with Ducks Unlimited, and we're trying to get a NACA grant to do a restoration project on our area. Is going to restore the whole area. And the goals of this project, to evaluate and modify the exterior levee system which surrounds the wildlife area. The reasoning for this is we had a flood in '86, which was pretty catastrophic, and we also had a flood in 2007, which was equally as catastrophic, ripping out numerous levees, roads, structures, which has to be rebuilt. And by modifying these levees, you potentially let the river system in a little bit earlier in certain areas, key points, and you armor those areas to prevent those catastrophic events. relocate the pump station from Flat Rock Creek to the Neosho River. We're not quite sure what we're going to do there yet due to costs, but there are several different options that we have available to us. So, reconfigure the pools to allow flows from Brogan Creek to be utilized efficiently. This is a creek that flows into our refuge system that gets pretty wild when we get 3 or 4 inch rain event, and if we're able to capture these flows and divert these flows into our hunting pools, then it can potentially save us a lot of money and headaches in pumping. And then reconfigure pool 3 into 2 separate units. And by doing this, the pool is kind of a storage pool more than anything, and this is going to allow us to manipulate one of those pools in a manner to where we can create some moist soil vegetation, flood it up late in the season, and keep those birds around for a longer period of time, and then use the other unit as a storage area. I'm going to go back to the pumping part of it. It's not only the pumping part that's going to help, but it's also the delivery. We're going to put in a flume that will pump the flume full, and then we'll be able to divert the water into separate pools. Right now, in order to get water to our refuge pool, we have to pump it through one of our hunting units. We would have to basically fill it about full in order to get water to flow into the refuge, which you don't want to wreck your habitat going from one pool to the other. So this is going to allow us the ability for better management. So I'm really excited about this project, and it's going to be a win-win for all the way around. I didn't talk about water rights. I didn't put that on my slides, but I can real quick. I basically have 2 water rights where I'm able to pump from. One is a very senior right, one of the most senior rights on the river system for recreation, and may actually be the senior right, which allows me to pump 3,000 acre-feet of water into my main area. And the other one is on the south unit. It's a junior right, however. It's an October 1 start date, and the river has to be minimum desirable stream flow of 50. So, and I guess with that, we'll bring everybody else out here, and if you have any questions for me or any of these other guys, we'll answer them now.
What do you guys do with the silt when you remove it from one of the areas?
Have you guys used silt?
Well, currently with the 404 permits, we're just able to leave it in the marsh once we remove it, and then we have to find some place to go with it. So
you spread it out?
we've been piling it, and it's the stuff we dug this summer with the backhoe was pretty much unconsolidated, so it has to sit on the side slope. So it's sitting in place right now. If anybody wants some free silt.
I think Carl moved a lot of silt last year, and he hired a company that had a truck, and they trucked it over here to one of these little area over here, kind of an upland area that was out of the marsh. And that's the issue, is what do you do with the silt when you take it out? Most times we take it, put it up on the levee, and it might be there for a year or two, and then slides back in. So that is an issue, and it's very costly to get rid of it.
Are there any other questions? Why don't we take...
Gerald? Sorry to interrupt you. I got one more thing. At the last commission meeting, the commission instructed us to come up with a waterfowl sign to encourage hunters to maintain a safe distance. And I'll put this on your desk so the time or the table when you get a chance to sit back down, the commission can look at it. But basically it says, waterfowl hunters, maintain safe distance between hunting parties. Be courteous of other hunters. Know your target and what lies beyond it. Following safe and ethical practices will ensure that everyone hunting public lands enjoys a high quality experience. So that's the sign that'll be up on all our kiosks, registration, daily hunt permit areas on our waterfowl areas.
Carol, I think we only have one more PowerPoint, and then all the PowerPoints are done, if you want to go ahead and finish
Why don't we go
that.
ahead and have the one more PowerPoint, and then we'll probably have to take a little break.
Sorry, guys.
We ready? Here you go, sir. All right. Evidently, some people need a break, so I'm going to wait on the PowerPoint here really quick. If our IT guys will. Okay, the Cheyenne Bottoms Signage Committee report. Basically, after our ecotourism, when our governor was here and did his spiel and his talk, by the power to be of Mr. Jennison and filter down, we came up with a committee. These are the members of the committee. As you can tell, we have a large variety of individuals, a lot of professionals, a lot of different views that come together. Sometimes it's challenging. Everybody has different points and different views, but overall the committee has done a great job. What you are going to see is basically a plan that we have started. Nothing is set in stone. These things will be altered as the committee gets into it. But what is the purpose of the sign committee? Well, during the discussion of what we did, this is about the best thing we could come up. And it was a quote from I'm not sure, just the committee in general, and it's to enhance the visitor experience in order to move towards stewardship of the resource. That, in a nutshell, was a great quote that came out of this committee. The mission statement, basically what we did is we wanted to see the mission statement of all the agencies involved. And as you look at them, every one of these will have, highlighted in blue, something to do with conservation, informing the public, travelers. Every one of the mission statements, everyone has the same general idea of what we need to do. As you see this, after we reviewed this, this is where we came up with this, and you'll see this one more time. We really need people to know what we do, and there's a fine balance of what we do when you're a Kansas Wildlife and Parks agency and you're a tourism individual, different aspects, but we want the same results. Some of the recommendations: entrance of the sign, interpretive signs, directional signs, and highway pullouts or pull-offs, whichever you want to say. I'll discuss these. As you see these, we know we don't control everything here. And there's going to be a lot of different individuals involved in what we do. Entrance signs. Currently, we have 2 entrance signs. 281, this entrance sign here is actually on private property. We don't own this. We don't have the ability to do much there. I think it is pretty much a consensus of the committee right now, but we will work through this. Do we want one major entrance to this area? We do have the entrance here at the Highway 156. We recognize that we need to do something to be a little bit more eye-catching. Having said that, the Wetland Education Center also realizes that we need to do something to attract people here. We believe this is should be the first stop to any visitor. Once they get here, they can get all the resources that they need. Interpretive signs, there's been a lot of work put into this, and here's some of the different organizations that actually have input. The list is there. I don't need to go through all of them. Anywhere from Barton County to Ducks Unlimited to the Wetland Education Center. There's been a lot of individuals who've put a lot of work prior to us and basically have set some of our framework. To tell the story of Cheyenne Bottoms is to tell one of the world's most important wetlands. You guys know, you've heard it over and over, this Cheyenne Bottoms is one of the most important wetlands that we have. All right. This is some of the theme storylines that have been come up by the members that were, organizations that were presented earlier. Right here we have 9. We don't know how many of these we'll use, but this is the direction we want to go. We also want to use the color pattern of the scenic byway. We understand that our signs are pretty natural, pretty dull, if you would. So what we want to do is we want to enhance these visual signs, and this is what we would like to do. These are some of the recommendations as we go by and update our signs, whether they're interpretive signs, directional signs, or whatever we do. This is what we would like to do. We can all agree that this is a lot more eye-catching than our standard wildlife signs we see. Directional signs, we want to develop some signs that we can put out in Cheyenne Bottoms that so when an individual stops, they know exactly where they're at in relationship to some of these listed here. A prime example of that, it will be something that looks a lot like this. Everything that will be put on that map has not been decided. We are in the planning stages, and we'll move forward with that. Here we understand, we feel that it would be in our best benefit to have pullouts or something to make it easier for the public to stop by. When they're driving by, give them access so they can safely pull onto Cheyenne Bottoms or the Wetland Education Center. We don't control this, but we were just told to make our major recommendations, and this is where we're at. In a nutshell, that is what we've come up with. At this point, we will now start the planning process. We'll take all those 4 topics that we had, and we will start to develop a plan. This was just an informational for Mr. Jennison and members of Great Bend and the surrounding communities. Any questions? None? Great.